Tonight we'll drift into the gentle folds of time, not to chase battles or emperors, but to follow something far more soothing, the humble postman of the Tang Dynasty. Dim your lights, settle under your blanket, let the day slide off your shoulders like silk falling from a sleeve. We're not in a hurry here, and neither were they, though their system was surprisingly efficient. Not with galloping horses or blazing fires, but something slower, softer, like a message handed from one pair of tired hands to another beneath moonlit trees. So if this calm journey helps you unwind, tap like and subscribe, only if it feels right. No pressure. Let's just enjoy this together. Now, close your eyes if you wish. Breathe deeply. Let the distant lanterns of Chang'an flicker in your imagination. And let's begin. Let me tell you a story. Imagine a city so sprawling, so methodically arranged, that it made Rome look like someone had dropped a handful of bricks and called it a capital. That city was Chang'an, meaning perpetual peace, the heart of the Tang Dynasty, not the bustling, jingling chaos of modern cities. No, this was harmony in geometry. Streets ran in perfect grids, markets placed with the care of brushstrokes. Walls whispered their own stories if you listened closely enough. But before we get ahead of ourselves, allow me to take your hand, figuratively of course, and lead you through a quiet morning in Chang'an. The sun hasn't yet risen. There's a thin layer of mist clinging to the clay rooftops, like the breath of a dreaming giant. You can hear the faint clop of wooden sandals, an early riser or a tea merchant setting up stall. There's the soft thump of cloth being unfurled, a banner perhaps, embroidered with characters announcing fresh plum cakes. Someone coughs lightly in an alley, a dog yawns, and nestled in one narrow lane barely wider than a stretched ox cart, a man lights a lantern, not to see but as a signal. He's not a merchant, not a monk, not a soldier. No, this is a postman. Well, relay courier might be the closer term, kind of human baton in a great sleepy marathon stretching thousands of miles. His job? To pass a pouch of messages to the next man, and the next, and the next, all the way to the empire's edge. No galloping here, no trumpet blast, just quiet precision. You see, while European couriers relied heavily on horse relays, impressive, yes, but also bumpy and loud, the Tang Dynasty had its own sleepy genius, the foot relay system. A line of runners, spaced like stitches on silk, carrying imperial decrees or merchant contracts faster than you'd imagine. Surprised? I was too. But consider this. These postmen knew every twist of road, every tea hut, every resting slab of stone. They didn't wait for roads to dry or hooves to heal. Their legs were their livelihood, their feet, messengers of the emperor himself. And sometimes they were faster than horses. Horses had to rest. Feet could nap on benches. The man you see now, let's call him Shun, he's already stretching. Not like a sprinter though, no dramatic lunges, just slow habitual motions. He knows today's route, 6.3 li, about 2 miles, and a gentle slope down toward the southern watchpost. He's eaten a warm, sticky rice ball, seasoned with dried plum and sesame wrapped in a crinkled bamboo leaf. If you've never had one, think of it as an ancient version of a granola bar, only warm and faintly salty, like a hug from your grandma if she were a sea breeze. Shun checks the tiny cloth packet tucked into his sash. It's stitched with imperial red thread, meant to signify urgency. But he doesn't panic. He starts walking. A slow trot, more or less. He'll pick up speed near the mulberry grove. Let's pause a moment and feel what he feels. Cool air brushing against his temples. The faint scent of fermented soy from a nearby kitchen. A crow calling lazily overhead. His sandals slap softly against the packed dirt path. Dust puffing up like powdered cinnamon. Shun's breath is measured. Every few li there's a small hut, sometimes with a pot of barley tea waiting, sometimes with a warm stone to sit on. That's the beauty of it. Not a race, but a rhythm, and each man knows his part. At the next hut, another courier, perhaps named Duyi, is already waiting. He's chewing on something. A sweet potato crisped in ash. He offers Shun one, but Shun waves him off. Sticky rice day, he mutters. Duyi nods solemnly, as if that explains everything. They exchange the pouch with a wordless nod. Shun turns back. Duyi runs on, and so it continues. Now, if you're picturing this as a sort of silent ballet of messengers weaving through the empire, you're not wrong. From Chang'an to Luoyang, from Luoyang to the coast, every message was a whisper that passed through sleeping villages and quiet pavilions. Imagine being a letter. Imagine being folded neatly by an ink-stained scholar, carried across streams, hills and forests, tucked against the chest of a sweating runner, cradled in a sleeve as he tiptoed past snoring guard dogs. You'd see the world before even being read. One such letter, in fact, arrived at the palace gates just as the morning drums began to sound. Not shouted, not trumpeted, simply handed to a gatekeeper, with the calm of someone delivering soup to a friend. And in that moment, the emperor, who happened to have a mild headache from last night's plum wine, read a poem written by a child in a fishing village. It made him chuckle softly, and he ordered sweet cakes for breakfast. All because of feet. Not hooves, not chariots, but calloused, steady feet. So the next time someone complains about walking, well, maybe tell them about Shun, about Duyi, about the thousands of men who in the quiet dawn of an empire delivered not just messages, but connection. And as we leave that warm tavern near the relay hut, the fire slowly dying and barley tea cooling in clay cups, let your mind wander to the next leg of this quiet journey. Let's walk together now, down a narrow lane lit with soft orange lanterns, each swinging gently from crooked poles, like sleepy eyelids fluttering in the breeze. You and I side by side under a velvet sky dusted with stars. Somewhere in the near distance, a bamboo flute plays a slow tune, as if the night itself were humming a lullaby. We've left Chang'an behind, but its pulse echoes still, through the feet of postmen, through the whispers passed from one calloused hand to another. Tonight, we follow that rhythm eastward, not too fast, just enough to feel it in our bones. Now here's something curious. These relay stations, known as yi, were spaced every 30 li or so. That's roughly 10 miles, give or take a dumpling, but in mountainous regions, closer. In flatter lands, longer. Like tuning a harp, the Tang Empire calibrated its messaging lines with care, each stretch chosen not for speed alone, but for balance. The postmen, they didn't complain. Not loudly anyway. Their humour was dry, like last week's radish buns. And these stations, oh, they were more than a mere huts. Imagine a longhouse built of fragrant cypress, floors swept smooth with straw bundles. Some had stables, yes, for the occasional horse courier, but the stars of the show were the runners, lean, weathered, and quietly proud. Let's pause at one now, just outside the city of Tongguan. It's early evening, and a gentle rain taps the roof tiles like fingers drumming on an old desk. Inside, it's warm, thanks to a brick hearth glowing orange, like a sleepy dragon curled around its own belly. A courier named Weng is soaking his feet in a shallow basin. The water's dark with medicinal herbs, mugwort, chrysanthemum, and something that smells faintly of licorice and pickles. He lets out a contented sigh. His partner Min is chewing dried tofu and nodding slowly at nothing in particular. These two have run this stretch for years. Between them and the previous courier, they've passed over 3,000 imperial messages, edicts, poetry, trade records, and once a rather urgent request for mooncakes. Do you like mooncakes? They did. Though truth be told, Wang preferred the lotus seed ones, while Min championed red bean. Lotus is too polite, Min once said. Red bean has attitude. Wang didn't argue. He just bit his and stared into the hearth, as he always did. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than even a crier in the market square. Outside, the road glistened, and beyond the hills, another courier station flickered into view, its lanterns visible like stars that had decided to come closer, just for the night. Back then, lanterns weren't just decoration. They were signals. Each station used a slightly different colour, blue, red, amber, depending on time of day and urgency, like sleepy lighthouses guiding messages home. And speaking of guidance, let me tell you about the foot scrolls. These were not scrolls in the usual sense, not poetry or contracts, but maps for the souls, a kind of calligraphy for couriers. tiny diagrams stitched inside tunics or even tattooed on ankles. Left at the big willow, one might say. Avoid barking dog near wine shop, another might advise. It was information passed down, not by scholars but by souls, and sometimes souls with holes. Here's a fun thought. In an age before GPS, the most reliable navigation was gossip between feet. And it worked. One courier, an old fellow nicknamed Cricket because of how his knees popped, once delivered a message across 80 li without a single error. He claimed he could do it blindfolded. Not because I memorized the turns, he said, but because I remembered the smells. Cricket knew which patch of the road smelled like millet soup from a farmhouse, where the bamboo leaves had a salty scent, where the air turned sweet with fig blossoms. He even recognized a patch of path that always smelled faintly of fish and sadness. No one questioned it. So here we are again, back with Weng and Min, their bellies full, their feet rested, and their scrolls checked. Next pouch, Wang says almost reluctantly. Min pulls a packet from the box lined with silk. Inside, a folded note tied with gold thread. It smells faintly of sandalwood. It's for the Eastern Gatekeeper, Min adds, from someone high up. Weng doesn't blink. He simply tucks the message inside his sash, stands, and rolls his shoulders. The rain has stopped. The road ahead is quiet. You want some bean paste before you go, Min offers. Not unless you want it back on your tunic, Wang mutters. And with that he's gone, into the night down the wet road toward the next lantern. Let's follow him, shall we? Step by step. The path ahead is lit not just by flame, but memory. And as the cool breeze kisses your cheeks, and the stars shift overhead like sleepy sentries, feel your breathing slow. Hear the crickets, the wind, the soft pat of feet on damp earth. This was how an empire stayed connected, not by thunder, by footfall. And as Wang disappears over the rise, the sky lightens ever so slightly with the promise of dawn. Now, let your thoughts drift, past the station, past the lanterns, to the next resting place in our story. Let your eyes grow heavy now. We're not in a hurry tonight. Let me take you to a courtyard nestled in the folds of a quiet mountain town. Not a famous one, just a place where the breeze carries the scent of pine and steamed buns, where the drums of the capital are only an echo softened by distance and time. The name of the town? That doesn't matter. What matters is that here, in this courtyard shaded by ginkgo trees, something small and wonderful is happening. A pot is bubbling. Steam curls from its surface, coiling like a dragon that doesn't care to roar. Inside, dumplings dance lazily, some sinking like sleepy thoughts, others rising with tiny burps of broth. These are not the dumplings you might know. These are Tang-style jiaozi, plump, chewy, stuffed with minced pork, scallion, and something delightfully unexpected, fermented tofu. It gives them a tang, like they've had a long day and aren't afraid to admit it. And these dumplings are not being made by a cook. They're being made by a postman. His name is Lei, and he's what they call a station lingerer. That's not a bad thing, it just means he's waiting for a message. Sometimes they arrive late, sometimes not at all. So while he waits, he makes dumplings and tells stories. Lei is one of those people who can fall asleep mid-sentence and wake up knowing exactly where he left off. He's large, slow-moving, with fingers like dough rollers, but his feet, surprisingly quick, like moonlit cats when duty calls. Tonight he has a visitor, a younger runner named Z, fresh from the valley route. Z is cold, his hands tremble slightly as he warms them over the hearth. His sandals are muddy, his braid damp with mist. Lei offers him a dumpling. "Eat this," he says. "Tastes like confusion and victory." Z bites, chews, then blinks. "It's sour." Lei smiles. "Told you." The two sit in silence, broken only by the occasional creak of bamboo in the wind and the sizzle of dumplings browning in the pan. Z, being young, asks what every young courier eventually asks. Did they really beat horses with just feet? Lei nods. Beat them like a gong. He explains how in certain regions, hilly, narrow, full of switchbacks, foot couriers outran horse relays by a whole day. No saddles to adjust. No hoof bruises to worry about. No stubborn stops to smell wild oats. Besides, Lei adds, horses can't enjoy dumplings. Z grins. Let me tell you, Lei continues, leaning back, There was a time I raced a horse relay from Luoyang to Xinfeng, just for fun. Guess who arrived first? Z waits. The message, Lei shrugs. Left me behind entirely. Turns out the Emperor sent a second copy with a pigeon. They both laugh. Low, sleepy chuckles, the kind that only come when your belly is full and your feet are sore in a good way. Outside, a distant drum sounds once. Then again, the night courier signal, and somewhere, a runner has passed a checkpoint, probably on the eastern ridge. Lei doesn't flinch. He doesn't need to. That drum's still 4 stations away, but he knows the sound. He hums along with it, like an old lullaby. Z, now fed and warm, pulls a blanket over his legs. He asks if the road ahead is steep. Lei nods. There's a tea lady halfway, he adds. She sells honeyed ginger slices. Say hello and don't step on her cat. Z thanks him, quietly. Then after a pause, what's the hardest message you've ever carried? Lei doesn't answer right away. He stares into the pot. The dumplings have stopped moving. The fire crackles low. Letter to a widow, he says at last. From her husband, delivered 3 weeks after he died. Z swallows. The room is silent again. But you know what, Lei adds, voice softer now. She smiled, said it smelled like him. And somehow, that was enough. The silence lingers now, longer and more meaningful. It stretches across the courtyard, wraps around the lanterns, seeps into the stone walls like steam from a kettle. Z closes his eyes. Lei stands and checks the message box. Nothing yet. He's not surprised. The night will be long, but not lonely, because in every dumpling shared, in every story traded over feet soaked in mugwort, something ancient and gentle is preserved. The art of waiting, of carrying, of connection. And as Z drifts off beneath a ginkgo tree, snoring softly, a faint light appears on the ridge, a lantern bobbing like a firefly. Another courier, another message, another chapter in this soft, quiet race against silence. And now, as the wind turns cooler and the dumpling pot settles into glowing coals, let your own thoughts drift. Perhaps you too are the letter, or maybe the dumpling. In either case, your journey continues. The sky is painted in slow strokes now, purple melting into amber, shadows stretching like cats in the last warmth of the day. We've left Lei and Z behind, their bellies full of dumplings and stories, and now we tread eastward, where the road curves through a quiet grove of mulberry trees. Do you smell that? The leaves here give off the faintest scent, green, earthy, and slightly sweet. If ink had a flavour, it might be this. Not surprising, since these trees fed the silkworms that made the threads of court robes and postal seals alike. And under those trees walks a woman named Nuo. She's a courier too. Didn't expect that, did you? But yes, women ran in the Tangfoot relay system. Not in all provinces, not in all stretches of road, but where the terrain was familiar and the need great, they moved with the same quiet pride as any man. Nuo isn't young, nor is she old. She's simply practiced. Her feet move like they've memorized the rhythm of the earth. Her stride is neither long nor short, but somehow just enough. She carries a pouch beneath her cloak, not tucked at her side, but across her chest, close to the heart. Inside is something strange for this hour, a letter not from one noble to another, but a recipe. That's right, a recipe. For a honey sesame crisp, reportedly so delicate it could shatter on a whisper. The imperial concubine who wrote it wanted it preserved, and sent to her aging grandmother in the north. And Nuo, she volunteered. Not for glory, but because she once made that same crisp 20 years ago, in a village that no longer exists. She remembers the texture, sticky, crunchy, with a hint of smoke from the clay oven, like biting into a memory wearing a caramel coat. So now, beneath mulberry branches heavy with fruit, she walks, and the world around her listens. Cicadas hum low like monks chanting in slow motion. Somewhere up the hill a goat bell clinks, a boy whistles, a breeze picks up, brushing the long grasses into waves. Nuo breathes it all in. Her feet are bare tonight, sandals tucked into her satchel. She prefers to feel the earth when the moon is just rising. Says it tells her things, like where the path dips, where a route waits, where snakes might stretch out, tired from the heat. At the edge of the grove, a stone marker leans slightly. It reads, faintly, 29 li to Longsea Station. Nuo touches it briefly, a habit, like greeting an old friend who never says much, but always stands in the same place. She stops to rest by a shrine, a tiny one, just 2 stones and a roof tile. People leave things here. Dried petals, copper coins, tiny notes scribbled on mulberry bark. Nuo adds a sesame seed. It's what she does. By now the light has gone soft, that magical hue that makes everything look like it's been painted with tea. You know the one, when outlines blur, when shadows become more interesting than the objects that cast them. She opens a small cloth bundle. Inside is her dinner. Half a salted egg, a wedge of taro, and a rolled-up pancake filled with pickled greens. No dumplings tonight. Just something cool and crisp, balanced. She eats slowly, thoughtfully, sips warm water from a gourd. Then she wipes her hands on her sleeves and continues. Each step forward is like turning a page. Each breath, a line of poetry. There is no rush, but there is rhythm. Now you might wonder, what happens if a message is dropped? Lost? Forgotten? Rare, but it happened. One story tells of a courier who lost his pouch crossing a flooded river. He dove after it, of course, but it was gone. Days later, it washed up in a fishing net, and the fisherman, upon seeing the red thread seal, ran half a day just to hand it back. Not for a reward, just because he felt it was the right thing. The message was soaked, but legible, and it simply said, "The stars over Luoyang were clear last night." A poem, nothing urgent, but somehow important. Back in the grove, Nuo reaches a rest post. No doors here, just a bench, a stone basin, a lantern. She lights it carefully, shielding the flame with her hand. The light flickers, then steadies. She hangs it from a tree branch, the same one used by dozens before her. Maybe hundreds. And it is. She sits, not to rest, but to wait. In 5 minutes, another courier will arrive from the South Trail. They'll exchange nods. No need for words, just the pouch. And maybe, a piece of dried fruit or a shared joke about mule droppings. But that comes later. Right now it's dusk. And under these trees the world feels wrapped in silk. So let's stay here a moment longer. Close your eyes if you'd like. Let the rustling leaves whisper above you. Feel the cool stone underfoot. And imagine what it's like to carry something not heavy, but precious. To walk not quickly, but truly. And as the lantern's glow warms your cheeks and the air thickens with night's hush, let your mind wander. The road continues, gently, onward. Have you ever eaten something so simple, so ordinary, that it somehow tasted like home, even if you were nowhere near it? That's the kind of meal we find tonight. The moon is rising slow, almost shy, above a sleepy village square. Somewhere beyond the rice paddies and paper lanterns, a dog barks once. Then again, softer, then stops. The square is quiet except for one little noodle stand, a rickety affair propped up by stubborn beams and old gossip. The sign, scrawled in fading ink, reads, "Midnight noodles, first bowl free if you're running from something." It's a joke, of course. Or maybe it isn't. We'll never know, because tonight the bowl is handed to a courier named Jin, who doesn't say what he's running from. Just thanks the old woman behind the pot and slurps up the first bite. The noodles are hand-pulled, long, elastic, with edges like soft lace. They swim in a broth of roasted scallions, dried shrimp, and something Jin can't quite place. Something smoky, familiar, like the scent of his grandmother's sleeves after cooking over a wood fire. He closes his eyes for a moment, feels the steam kiss his face, hears the quiet sizzle of something being fried nearby. Turnip cake, maybe, or bean-curd skin. The sound blends into the night, like a lullaby made of salt and oil. He hasn't spoken since arriving, didn't need to. The old woman just looked at the satchel slung across his back, saw the dust on his knees and nodded. The language of the road. Few other villagers are here too. None talk much. They eat slowly like they're afraid to wake the night. Jin's satchel contains only one message tonight. A folded slip of silk embroidered with 6 characters. He hasn't looked at it. It's not his to know, but he knows its weight. Not in grams, but in meaning. He shifts slightly on the wooden bench, His toes wiggle in their cloth wraps. He stretches one leg, then the other. He's halfway through a 2-day route, the kind that cuts through mountain passes and across rope bridges that creak even when no one is on them. So the noodles, they matter. They're not just food, they're courage in broth form. The old woman finally speaks, wiping her hands on her apron. Where to? Jin gestures northeast, then, almost as an afterthought, points to the sky. She raises one eyebrow. Stars don't always know the way, Jin smiles, but they don't lie either. He finishes the last of the broth, sipping straight from the bowl. The ceramic is chipped but warm, and that warmth seems to settle somewhere between his ribs, where doubt sometimes lives. Have this, the woman says, handing him a pickled quail egg wrapped in parchment. For the next ridge. He bows, not deeply, but with sincerity, the kind of bow that says we're both part of something old and quiet. And then he's gone. No fanfare, no farewell, just soft footsteps against the packed dirt. You see, in the Tang relay system, you didn't just carry letters. You carried kindness. You carried the fact that someone, somewhere, thought about a message and trusted you to move it. That's a responsibility, but also a comfort. And while Jin walks, his mind drifts. He remembers another night long ago, another bowl of noodles shared with his sister under a silk parasol in the rain. She'd added too much vinegar. They'd laughed for an hour. She's married now, in a town near the sea, sends letters once a season. Jin always knows which ones are hers. They smell faintly of pear blossom and sea salt. He hasn't replied yet. He means to. Just, sometimes the road gets in the way. Still, he's thinking of her now, as the moon climbs higher and the wind picks up. A few drops of rain fall, light, almost teasing. Jin pulls up his hood, keeps walking. The path ahead curves slightly, framed by whispering bamboo. Somewhere up there is the next station. Maybe a bench, maybe a smile. Definitely another lantern swaying gently like it's trying to stay awake. As Jin disappears into the trees, the old noodle woman extinguishes her fire. She doesn't say goodbye. Doesn't need to. The smell of broth lingers. The bench is still warm, and the message, still moving, still carried, still safe. So as you close your eyes, imagine yourself at that table, steam rising, wind sighing, the taste of scallion and comfort on your tongue. And with each breath, let the road lengthen gently in your mind, not as something to travel, but as something to feel. A thread, a line, a story stretching into the night. Now imagine this, a stretch of path so quiet even the birds speak in whispers. Trees hang low on either side, their leaves brushing the shoulders of passers-by like shy greetings. The earth is soft underfoot, padded by years of footsteps and dropped mulberry leaves. And up ahead, a relay post so small it could almost be missed, were it not for the 3 goats standing on the roof. Yes, goats. The postmaster here, a wiry fellow named Bo, raises goats the way some folks raise questions, constantly and without much ceremony. He's not what you'd expect from an official Tang relay operator. His robe is patched with more history than fabric, and he wears one sandal made of straw and the other of bark. Why? One for comfort, one for reminders, he always says. No one quite knows what he means, but Bo runs a tight post, every scroll accounted for, every runner fed, watered, and sent back into the wild with a fresh pair of insoles if needed. His secret? A pot of sweet yam porridge and a ledger bound in cured pigskin, and names written so neatly you'd swear he copied them from a calligrapher's dream. It's nearing midday now. The sun is soft, more interested in lounging behind a cloud than blazing. A courier named Fan arrives, wiping sweat from his brow with a sleeve that smells faintly of plum wine and road dust. He's halfway through his circuit, and this stop is like an oasis made of clay bowls and shade. Bo nods when he sees him. Fan nods back. They don't speak, not right away. It's not silence out of coldness, just a kind of mutual agreement. First, rest. Then, stories. Fan removes his pouch and hands it over. Bo weighs it in his palm. Feels like 2 messages, he says at last. 3, Fan replies, sipping from a wooden ladle of cucumber water. Bo raises an eyebrow, opens the pouch. Sure enough, 3 scrolls, One addressed to a merchant in Suzhou, one to a monk at the Cloud Cliff Temple, and the third, untitled, wrapped in silk, sealed with wax. Bo doesn't ask. He simply slides it into a drawer lined with rabbit fur and mutters, "No mice getting this one." Then he gestures to the bench shaded by hanging gourd vines. You want porridge or silence? Fan thinks. Bit of both. So he gets a bowl and sits beneath the vines, spooning up slow bites of yam and sesame. It's thick, slightly sweet, and carries a whisper of ginger, just enough to make his ears feel warm. Overhead, the goats bleat lazily. One of them nudges a gourd which falls with a soft thump near Fan's foot. "That one's yours now," Bo says without looking up from his ledger. Fan nods. He's too tired to argue with fate or goats. As he eats, he listens. A cicada chirps once. A wind chime clinks in the corner of the post. A squirrel, perhaps overly ambitious, attempts to carry away a courier's sandal. It's a quiet sort of comedy, and Fan lets out a soft chuckle. Bo looks up. "You laugh like someone who's carried poetry today." Fan swallows. "Love letter, actually. Smelled like sandalwood and desperation," Bo chuckles. "That's the worst kind." Fan finishes the porridge, wiping his bowl clean with the last piece of flatbread. Then, almost as an afterthought, he pulls a folded scrap from his sleeve. "A joke," he says, handing it to Bo. Bo unfolds it, reads, raises an eyebrow. "Did you write this?" "Copied from an indoor," Fan shrugs. It reads, "Why did the scholar refuse to eat dumplings? He didn't want to confuse them with footnotes." Bo snorts. "That's terrible." "Exactly." And with that, Fan stands. His break is over. His feet itch, not from discomfort, but from habit. The road calls like a sleepy friend asking for just one more story before bed. Bo hands him a fresh satchel and a slice of dried persimmon. "Tell the goats I said goodbye," Fan says, stepping off the porch. "They never listen," Bo replies. Fan walks on, through a patch of shadow, across a creek where frogs sit like jade coins, past an old woman spinning thread who waves without looking up. And as he walks, he feels the porridge settle in his stomach like a promise. There will always be a bench, a bowl, a quiet stop between stretches of silence. You see, this is the part of history people often skip. Not the emperors, not the battles, but the goats, the porridge, the joke written on the back of a tax notice and shared across 1,000 li. These are the moments that carried the Tang relay. Not speed, not fear, but familiarity. Soft sandals and softer laughter. So as you settle in, let your breath mimic Fan's steps. Slow, steady, sure, and let the road ahead unfold gently. We'll meet again at the next bend beneath the next vine, with another scroll to carry and another story to tell. There's a kind of quiet that only exists in courtyards where apricot blossoms fall. Not the silence of emptiness, no, but the kind filled with little things. The buzz of a lazy bee, the drip of water from a tiled roof, the scratch of a bamboo rake across stone. We find ourselves now in one such courtyard, tucked behind a small postal house on the eastern fringes of the Tang network. It's not on any tourist map, if maps had existed then for such things, but its walls have seen centuries, and at the centre of the courtyard stands an apricot tree, its trunk twisted like an old man's smile, and its blossoms dropping slowly, slowly, like pink snowflakes that forgot they were supposed to be cold. Beneath the tree sits an inkstone. It's old, cracked slightly on one corner, used by generations of couriers not to write messages, but to annotate relay records, sign route logs, or jot little poems when the day felt particularly reflective. You know the kind. 5 lines, no rhyme, but somehow it makes your chest ache a little. Today, a courier named Sue is seated beside it. Sue has sharp eyes and soft hands, rare for a runner, but then she's also a calligrapher in her spare time. She runs only part of the week. The rest, she transcribes messages in delicate brushstrokes onto silk so the court can archive them. And she never travels without her own ink. Her pouch contains not only scrolls, but 2 brushes, a porcelain water dropper shaped like a fish, and a small stone seal carved with her name, Sue of the Apricot Station. She's currently mixing ink, slowly, rhythmically. The moistened ink stick circles the stone like a lazy planet. The air smells of soot, plum, and paper. Every few minutes a blossom lands on her brush, and she plucks it off with the same care you might give to a sleeping kitten. You might wonder, why the ink? Why write when the message is already written? Well, Sue is copying one now, not for bureaucracy, not even for duty. She's copying it for herself. It's a farewell letter, written by a scholar to his apprentice. The original's on bamboo, crude but heartfelt. Sue is giving it new life, transcribed in elegant Tang script, each stroke breathing just a little more into the words. And what does it say? It says, "Carry knowledge lightly like a bird carries sky. Do not chase wind, let it carry you." Sue smiles faintly. She finishes the copy, folds it into a pouch of scented silk and tucks it behind her sash. Not for delivery, for memory. From within the post house a bell chimes. That means a courier is arriving. Sure enough, moments later a boy of perhaps 16 stumbles in. Dusty, breathless, a bit overwhelmed by the beauty of the courtyard. His name is Lin, and this is his second run ever. He bows clumsily. "Message for the apricot station," he says between gulps of air. Sue stands. Her movements are precise, as if choreographed by time. She accepts the pouch, checks the seal, nods. "You made good time," she says softly. Lin beams. "Would you like tea?" she adds. He nods faster than necessary. Soon they're seated on a bench near the tree, each holding a tiny clay cup. The tea is bitter but soothing, like truth after a long lie. Lin eyes the inkstone. "You write with that?" Sue nods. He leans forward. "Can I try?" She doesn't hesitate. She simply hands him the brush. He dips it carefully, hesitates, then writes one character. Feng, wind. It's lopsided, a little nervous. Sue smiles. "Your hand is honest." Lin blinks. "Is that good?" It's rare. They sit a while longer. No rush. There's always another message, but there's not always another moment like this. Between steps, between runs, between breaths. Eventually Lin stands. "I should go." "Take this," Sue says, handing him a folded scrap. He opens it. Inside, the character he wrote. Beneath it, she's written, "Let this carry you." He bows again. Not clumsily this time. And then he's gone, footsteps soft against the mossy stones. Sue returns to the inkstone. She adds a few more drops of water, begins to mix again. The blossom drift continues. The afternoon slides gently toward dusk. "And you? You're still here, aren't you?" Sitting beside her. Hearing the brush move, feeling the breeze play with your hair. You don't need to say anything, just listen to the hush. The clink of cups, the rustle of paper, the sigh of an apricot tree telling secrets to no one in particular. Because in this moment, nothing needs to be delivered. You are the message, you are the pause. And as the ink darkens and the shadows stretch like yawns across the ground, let your breath follow the rhythm of the brush. In, curve. Out, stroke. And gently we move onward, toward the next whisper of the road. Imagine this. The sound of water gently lapping against wooden posts. The creak of oars dipping slowly into a wide, quiet river. Above, a hazy moon watches from behind a gauze of drifting clouds. You're seated on a ferry, not the kind with brass rails and smoke, but a flat raft of planks, guided by a ferryman whose beard seems older than the river itself. Tonight's crossing is calm. The sky is the colour of cool ash. The water, almost mirror still, except where fish break the surface to whisper secrets. A soft mist rolls over the banks, curling around stones, reeds, and the toes of couriers waiting on the far shore. One such courier is already aboard. Her name is May, and she's wrapped in 2 cloaks, one for warmth, one for courtesy. The message pouch rests on her lap, tucked neatly under a scarf embroidered with cranes. Her fingers are curled around a small twist of paper, inside ginger candy. You can smell it, sharp, sweet, tingling. She unwraps it slowly, the crinkle of the wax paper echoing louder than the oars. Pops it into her mouth. She closes her eyes. "Makes the river feel warmer," she murmurs. The ferryman doesn't reply. He just hums something, an old folk song that doesn't care if it's remembered or not. Across from May sits an old man. Not a courier, not a merchant, just someone. He has a basket of turnips and a bundle of reed flutes. May offers him candy. He declines politely. Instead, he offers her a flute. "Made this one today," he says. She turns it in her hands. It's smooth, simple, and smells faintly of wet grass. She tucks it into her belt. "Thank you." "You run letters?" he asks. "I walk them," she replies with a little smile. The man nods like he understands, and he does, in a way. The boat drifts on. Halfway across, the fog thickens, shapes blur. The shore disappears behind them, only the sound of oars remains. Regular, slow, like a heartbeat without hurry. May closes her eyes again. This isn't her first river, not even her 10th. She's crossed with news of births, of deaths, of military movement, of poetry. Once she delivered a drawing from a child to his father posted at a border fort. It was just 3 stick figures and a sun. The father wept. Tonight's message isn't urgent, but it is meaningful. A merchant's confession to an old partner, asking for forgiveness over a debt gone unpaid. No signature, just a wish. Sometimes messages didn't need names, just arrival. As the boat bumps gently against the far bank, the fog begins to lift. On shore, another courier waits. A tall man in a short coat sharpening a walking stick with a fishbone knife. He nods to May, she nods back. The pouch is passed with no fanfare. She offers him candy. He takes one. "Still warm," he says. "Keep it that way," she replies. The ferry pushes off again. The river reclaims its silence. May doesn't linger. She turns up her collar, adjusts her cloak, and begins walking the embankment road, where reeds brush against her boots and frogs blink from the shallows. She hums now, a little tune, maybe the one the ferryman sang, maybe one her mother used to murmur while wrapping dumplings. And as she walks, she remembers another crossing. Winter, that one, ice in her lashes. The boat cracked with frost, but the message still reached its end, because that's what mattered. That's what always mattered. Movement, continuity, the long thread that stretched from city to village, from emperor to farmer, from apology to peace. Ginger candy helped, of course. It always did. As May rounds a bend, a lantern comes into view, flickering from the rafters of a rest house, its glow like a whispered welcome. She'll sleep there tonight. Maybe play the flute. Maybe write a letter of her own. But for now, her steps continue. Quiet, steady, surrounded by night sounds and memories of water. And you? You're still there, aren't you? Seated in the ferry, mist curling around your ankles, the taste of ginger warming your breath. The river is behind you now, and the road ahead is soft and slow, no hurry, just hush. And as your thoughts drift like fog over quiet waters, feel yourself cross too, from wakefulness into rest, one oar stroke at a time. The road curves now, narrowing slightly as we move into a hilly region dotted with small, round houses and mossy stone markers, some so ancient their inscriptions have faded into poetic ambiguity. Is that a date or a bird, a name, or just the crack of time? It doesn't matter, not tonight. Because tonight we arrive at a village whose claim to fame isn't its age or its tea, or even its surprisingly dramatic sunset geese. It's a stone drum, yes, a real one, carved from a single block of granite, round as a harvest moon and etched with patterns no one quite understands. It sits beneath a cedar tree just behind the village square, where children play and elders drink soup loud enough to disturb silence but not serenity. And it hums. Not literally, of course. But when the wind hits just right, and someone happens to lean against it while shelling peas or scratching their back, you feel a kind of deep, contented hum, like the earth snoring under your feet. Tonight, a courier named Quan sits beside the stone drum. He's thin, almost too thin, wears a blue scarf that used to be green and carries a pouch twice stitched where a goat once mistook it for cabbage. He's tired but not weary. You know the difference, right? Quan is just tired. He's waiting for his next relay, delayed by muddy roads, and passing the time the way most couriers do, quietly judging other people's chickens. One pecks too fast, one struts too confidently. One, well, that one's not even a chicken, but an unusually confused duck. Beside him is his lunch, a cold millet cake and a pickled turnip wrapped in wax paper. He unwraps it slowly, reverently, as if opening a letter from a friend. And just as he lifts it to his mouth, it's gone. Snatched by a monkey, a small one, brown, unapologetic. It dangles from a low branch, waving the turnip triumphantly, as if to say, "This is what happens when you pause for poetry." Quan blinks. The monkey takes a bite. Quan sighs. He doesn't shout, doesn't chase. He simply mutters, "It was the last good one." But a villager nearby laughs. She's sitting on a stool peeling ginger. "Serves you right for sitting near the monkey tree," she says. "There's a monkey tree?" She nods. "We don't know why, but they love this one." Quan moves his bag to the other side of the stone drum, just in case. The villager tosses him a ginger slice. He nods in thanks, chews slowly. It's spicy. Wakes up the inside of his cheeks. Clears the fog in his head just a little. That's when the delayed runner arrives, out of breath. Mud up to his calves, shoes flopping like broken soup ladles. He hands Quan a small scroll case. Quan opens it. Inside only 2 words. Confirmed. Proceed. He raises an eyebrow. "Classified?" he asks. The runner shrugs. "Maybe. Or maybe someone just enjoys drama." Quan tucks it into his pouch, stands, stretches, and gives the monkey a parting nod. The monkey, turnip half eaten, nods back, looking slightly ashamed, or perhaps just bored. As Quan walks toward the northern path, a child runs up and hands him a boiled egg, wrapped in cloth. "For your trouble," the child says, giggling. "Which one?" "The turnip trouble." Quan thanks her, tucks the egg carefully into his side pocket. The road ahead is quiet, mostly uphill, winding past terraces of green onions and sleepy scarecrows. At one bend, the earth smells suddenly of mint. At another, like rain, though the sky is dry. That's the thing about these relay roads. They're not just about where you're going, they're about what you pass. A goat with a bell that sounds like laughter. A puddle reflecting 3 moons when there's only one. A drum that doesn't play but listens. As Quan walks, he hums. It's not a tune you'd recognize. He made it up 2 posts back and forgot most of it already, but the rhythm keeps him steady. 1 step, 2, shift weight, breathe. The egg in his pocket bumps gently against his hip. A reminder, you may lose your turnip, but someone will give you something else. And isn't that how the world works? Quiet loss, quiet gift, carried forward. So now let's pause a moment. Feel the stone beneath your own seat, rough and cool. Hear the monkey chewing, unapologetic. Smell the ginger in the air, sharp and clean. The path is ready when you are. And as we leave the village of the stone drum and stolen turnip, let your thoughts follow Quan into the dusk. Uphill, through silence, toward the next lantern waiting to be lit. It's morning now, early, before the roosters, before the bells, before the world wakes up and starts asking things of you. The air is cool, but not cold. The sky above still carries a hint of lavender, like it forgot to change into its daytime clothes. You're standing just outside a border post, a low-walled structure nestled between 2 hills where wild grass curls around the stones and dew beads like tiny pearls on every surface. This is where the empire thins out, not in strength but in presence. The capital is far behind. The roads here are rougher, less travelled, shaped more by weather and goats than by plans, and yet the messages still come, because even the edge needs to feel the centre. Inside the post house, a woman named Tao is lighting a small stove. She's quiet, graceful in the way someone becomes when they've spent most of their days in solitude and weather. She's making cloud cakes. You've never had one. Let me describe it. Imagine if Steam and Sugar decided to open a bakery. Cloud cakes are made from rice flour, whisked to foam, then steamed with honey and a dash of crushed chrysanthemum petals. When done right, they collapse into your mouth like a sigh wearing slippers. Tao only makes them at dawn. Sweeter when the world is still yawning, she says. She places 3 on a palm leaf, sets them on a small bamboo tray and walks them to the wooden bench outside. There, 2 runners are seated. One from the east, just finishing a delivery, and one from the west, preparing to take it onward. Their names? Doesn't matter. What matters is the ritual. Each receives a cloud cake. No words exchanged. Just a soft nod of gratitude and the silence of chewing that says more than most conversation. The scroll changing hands is slim, bound with a thread dyed with mulberry ink. That's the sign of a long-distance message. Perhaps from a scholar, or a spy, or a grandmother sending recipes disguised as proverbs. No one reads it. That's the rule. Tao sits beside them, sipping a thin tea made from barley and orange peel. She's not a courier, not anymore, but she remembers the routes, every rock, every shady turn, every field where bandits might appear, but usually didn't. She tells them a story while they eat, of a time years ago when a relay runner arrived carrying nothing, no pouch, no letter. Just a phrase memorized in his head, "Send help to Red Mountain." That was it. He repeated it to every station, just that phrase, like a poem passed from dream to dream. And you know what? Help came. That mountain was saved. Not because of ink or paper, because someone remembered, because someone ran, and because the message mattered more than the method. The two couriers finish their cakes. The old one stands and adjusts the strap on his satchel. He stretches, not dramatically, just enough to crack something that had been waiting to be cracked. The younger courier slips on his sandals and tests the path with his toe, as if asking it for permission. "Watch the wind near the ridge," Tao says. "It pretends it's helpful, then steals your hat." They nod. The message passes hands, then, just like that, they're gone. One heading east, one west. Two lines drawn in opposite directions by the same pencil. Tao clears the tray. She's smiling now. A small smile, like a secret you keep just to make tea taste better. She wipes the bench, tucks the remaining cloud cake into a clay jar. That one is for the next visitor. Even out here, at the edge of maps, the ritual holds. Not just the relay, not just the message, but the kindness between it all. You can feel it in the way Tao moves, in the way the couriers never ask for cake but always find one waiting, in the hush of the hills, which listen more than they speak. So now, take a bite of your own imagined cloud cake. Feel the warmth of steamed rice and honey fill your mouth. Let it settle behind your eyes. Let it soothe whatever noise the day left behind. Because here, at the edge of the empire, the only thing louder than silence is care. And as the post fades behind you and the trail leans upward into pine and mist, you carry not just a scroll, but a story. Yours. Ours. And as your breath softens, and the world blurs gently at the edges like steam over a tea bowl, the next step waits, quiet and welcoming. Let me take you now to a mountain path where the wind speaks in riddles. Not loud, not sharp, just that whispering sort of wind, the kind that curls around your collar and tugs at your sleeve like it wants to tell you a secret, but hasn't decided whether you're ready to hear it yet. We're halfway up a ridge path now, somewhere between two towns you'd only find if you got lost on purpose. The trees here lean west, permanently shaped by years of breeze and story. The moss is thick enough to nap on, if you are not in a rush, which fortunately we aren't. Our courier today is a man named Ren. He's middle-aged, carries a limp that comes and goes with the weather, and wears a tunic made of faded silk dyed a colour you'd call stormwater blue. His bag hangs low, worn thin but still stitched tight. Inside, one scroll, and a pair of slippers. Only the slippers don't match. One is made of straw, clearly handmade and a bit frayed at the toes. The other, soft felt embroidered with clouds. A gift from a noble woman, he says, or a bribe, depending on the day. Lost its pair, he tells anyone who asks, but I kept it, too soft to abandon. Ren walks with a slow rhythm, stopping occasionally to rub his knee or fish a pine needle out of his collar. He hums sometimes, mostly songs from plays he saw as a boy, sometimes just sounds, like vowels that forgot what words they belonged to. He's heading toward Windpath Station. Strange place. Not because of ghosts or danger, but because of the wind. It changes direction mid-sentence. You'll start hearing it from the left, then it finishes the sentence over your right shoulder. Couriers joke that it listens in, then corrects your grammar. Ren likes it. Says the wind there reminds him of his uncle. Grumbly but never cruel. As he nears the pass, he sees a flag fluttering on a crooked pole. It means message received, runner expected, tea ready. Comforting words, even if unspoken. Ren reaches the post gate. It creaks open with a noise like an old man clearing his throat. Inside, the station is empty, save for a young woman stirring a pot over a brazier. She looks up, nods once, and gestures to a bench. No words needed. Her name is Lee. She doesn't talk much. He removes the scroll. It's wrapped in waxed linen sealed in blue. He sets it on the low table. She glances at it but doesn't reach. "I think it sings," Wren says, half joking. She shrugs. "Some scrolls do." He removes his slippers, rubs one foot then the other. The floor is warm from the brazier. He sighs. "I walked too long in the straw one." She ladles out tea, roasted barley and hawthorn. He sips, then smiles. "I thought this only grew down in Meizhou." She shrugs again. He takes another sip. It tastes like an old orchard at dusk. As he rests, he notices something on the windowsill, a matching felt slipper. Identical to his. He blinks. Lee notices his stare. "Left behind by a courier 4 seasons ago." Wren tilts his head. "You kept it." She nods. "Too soft to abandon." He laughs, a low full laugh that shakes the dust off the silence. She smiles, just a little. Wren leaves the slipper where it is. 2 matching ones would feel like cheating now. After tea he stands, his legs complain but not loudly. "Any word on the wind scroll?" he asks, motioning to the message he brought. She finally touches it, lifts it gently, sniffs it. "Lavender and ink. Merchant family. Poem inside, maybe." He nods. She tucks it into a drawer. He puts on his mismatched slippers, adjusts his bag. The brazier pops once, like it's saying goodbye. As he steps outside, the wind greets him. Right ear first, then left, then circles around his shoulders like a scarf made of hush. He smiles. "Still talkative," he murmurs. The wind doesn't disagree, and so he walks. Downhill now. The sun peeks over the mountain shoulder, spilling gold across the path. A squirrel scolds him from a branch. A patch of flowers opens halfway, as if not fully awake. Wren hums again. This time the wind joins in, and as he rounds the bend, slippers tapping a quiet rhythm, a blue butterfly dances beside him. The path is long, but never lonely, because even the wind carries stories, and sometimes the best ones come in pairs that don't quite match. So rest your feet now. Imagine soft felt on one, straw on the other. A bench warmed by coals, tea with the flavour of distance. Let your breath sway like laundry in a lazy breeze. And when you're ready, we'll take another step. But no rush. The road waits. Evening again. A quieter one than usual. The kind of evening that feels padded, as though the sky has laid a thick woolen blanket across everything. Trees, rooftops, even the corners of your thoughts. We're in a courtyard now, surrounded by thick stone walls covered in ivy so old it's considered part of the address. The courtyard belongs to a silent station, a rare one. No bells, no horns, no drums, just a lantern above the doorway, lit at dawn and extinguished only by moonlight. Inside, the messengers speak only in gestures. There's not a vow of silence, not a monastery, just tradition. Messages that pass through here are sensitive, delicate. Some are written in code, some not written at all. They're remembered. This station, tucked deep in the folds of the southern hills, was built for what they called mind runners. Couriers trained not to carry, but to recall. Only one message at a time, never 2. But never forgotten. Tonight we meet one of them. His name is Yao. He's tall, almost lanky, with eyes like wet ink and a habit of cracking his knuckles before speaking. Not that he speaks often. He walks with his hands clasped behind his back, muttering softly to himself. Not nonsense, but rhythm. A way to hold the messages in place. The one he carries tonight isn't in his bag. It's in his breath. A 12-line poem, dictated by a noble whose voice trembled with something unspoken. It was never written down, just spoken once, and now it lives in Yao's mind. He repeats it with each step, not aloud, but through cadence. He hums it while chewing rice. He thinks it while tying his sandals. He sees it reflected in puddles. He'll recite it at the next station to a woman named Shen, who will listen with eyes closed, nod, and recite it again before he finishes. Then it will pass from Yao's breath into hers, and only then, perhaps, be written down in careful brushstrokes for the recipient. Not before, not even by accident. This form of relay was rare, but cherished. Because sometimes ink could be stolen, but breath disappears once it's given. Yao is nearly at the next post now. His path has curved through a bamboo grove, where the wind makes the stalks clack together like quiet applause. He stops once, to rest, yes, but also to rehearse. Not just the words, the pauses, the tone, the unspoken meaning behind the phrasing. He tilts his head, listens to the rhythm of the frogs in the distance, and lets that guide him. When he finally arrives, Shen is already there. She sits cross-legged beside a candle, eyes closed. She doesn't greet him. He doesn't bow. He simply speaks. 12 lines, soft, even, like pouring tea with your voice. She listens, nods once, and then repeats it back. Perfect. They sit in silence for a moment longer. Then Shen opens a scroll and writes the poem out in measured brushwork. The paper smells faintly of lotus and camphor. She rolls it carefully, slips it into a sleeve pouch. Neither speaks, but both smile. Yao is offered a bowl of soup, noodles with bits of smoked duck and scallion. The broth is clear, clean, it tastes like honesty. Afterward, he lies down under the eaves, not in a bed, but on a thick mat of reed fibres. The stars are out now. A few clouds drift past like old friends stopping by but not staying. He closes his eyes. He dreams of nothing. Not because he has no dreams, but because he has already delivered the day's thought, and there's peace in the absence of what you are carrying. The scroll is safe. The message remembered. Tomorrow there will be another. But for now, even the breath rests, so breathe with him. Slowly. In one thought. Out another. Let your worries slide away like ink down parchment. Let your mind empty, not in loss but in completion. You carried something and now it's been given. So sleep, messenger. You've done well. There's a curve in the road where most travellers stop. Not because they plan to, but because something about that bend slows your feet without asking. Maybe it's the way the trees arch overhead like a blessing. Or maybe it's the sound of water trickling over smooth stones from a hidden spring nearby. Or maybe it's the smell of toasted rice and burnt sugar carried on the wind. That smell means one thing. You've reached the turning tea house. Of course, that's not its real name, but no one remembers the original anymore. The signboard simply reads, Zi Chu, place of pause. It began as a shack, a shelter for tired postmen, nothing more. But one day, long ago, a woman named Ai began offering tea to the couriers who passed through. Not for coin, just for company. She never asked their names, only where they come from and where they were going. And sometimes, they didn't go. Something about her tea or her presence or the silence around the place, it made people pause longer than they meant to. Days, sometimes. Occasionally weeks. Not because they were lost, because they weren't ready to keep going. The tea house grew, slowly. A second bench, a third roof tile, then a stove, then a shelf full of scrolls left behind by messengers who found they had more to say than deliver. And eventually I painted the walls with messages no one had sent. Things like, I miss the sound of my mother's cooking spoon. Or, if this tea tastes bitter, it's only because you're holding something too tightly. Now, centuries later, Ai is gone, but her great-granddaughter Lian keeps the place alive. And the messages, still there. Faded, yes, but legible if you lean close and squint with your heart. Today a courier arrives with dust on her shoulders and a pebble in her boot. Her name is Fei. She's quiet, wiry. She has the look of someone who's been carrying things far heavier than parchment. Lian doesn't ask anything, just pours a cup of toasted rice tea, places a small plate of caramelized ginger next to it, then sits down with her own cup. Fei drinks, lets the warmth settle in her chest. Then she sighs. I think I missed something, she says softly. Lian raises an eyebrow. Somewhere along the route, Fei continues, a turn I should have made, a message I forgot to carry, or maybe I just left something behind without realizing. Lian nods once, then gestures to the wall. Fei follows her gaze. Scrawled in uneven ink near a wooden beam, she reads, You can still be on the right path even if you rest a while. She laughs, a breathy, relieved kind of laugh. "I think your walls are wiser than your tea," she says. "Not possible," Lian replies. "My tea is made from secrets." Faye eats the ginger. It snaps between her teeth like resolve. She sets down her cup, reaches into her pouch and pulls out a tiny scrap of silk. Writes a few words, hands it to Lian. "What's this?" Lian asks. Faye shrugs. "Something I forgot to say." Lian tucks it into a wooden drawer, already full of forgotten things. Faye stays the night. Sleeps on a woven mat beneath a window framed in plumwood. In her dreams, she walks a path she didn't know existed. One that curves softly downhill, lined with glowing fireflies and laughter she remembers from childhood. When morning comes, she's ready. She thanks Lian, picks up her pouch, adjusts the strap, and turns, not left, not right, but back the way she came. Not because it was a mistake, but because it wasn't finished. Sometimes, the turning tea house doesn't stop you. It simply nudges, realigns, softly, like a breeze that convinces your feet to wander just a bit longer before heading home. As Faye disappears down the hill, Lian lights incense and writes another phrase on the wall. "You're not lost if the stillness finds you first." So now, pause with me. Drink the tea. Feel the warmth in your palms, the caramel and spice at the back of your tongue. Breathe out slowly. Listen for the silence between words, and let your thoughts curve gently, like that road around the tea house, back toward yourself. There is no rush. The next message will wait. Let me take you now to a hill so still the wind tiptoes across it. Not for fear of disturbing anything, but out of respect. Atop that hill stands a structure not quite a tower, not quite a house. It's a square post with open sides, wooden beams worn smooth by weather and time, and in the centre, suspended from a beam carved with dragons and clouds, a bell. Not a large one, but heavy, bronze, tarnished, etched with names that have long lost their vowels. It hangs motionless, even in a storm. No rope, no mallet, just air beneath it. They call it the bell that never rang, and yet it's never silent. Because this place isn't about sound, it's about pause. You see, this was once a major intersection in the Tang relay route. 4 paths converging at a single hilltop. Couriers from north, south, east and west passed through here. But instead of running scrolls to each other's hands, they stopped, sat, breathed, sometimes shared rice cakes, sometimes didn't say a word. The bell was placed not to summon or signal, but to hold space, a reminder that in the midst of carrying words, one should also make time for not speaking, and tonight a courier named Anne arrives. He's young, still new enough to wear his uniform too precisely. Tunic straight, sash tight, satchel spotless. His eyes are alert, feet fast, heart slightly too eager. But he's tired. Really tired. Not just from the uphill trail that curves around the mountain like a lazy snake, but from the weight of responsibility. He's been entrusted with a message from the Ministry of Music. Delicate, poetic, strange. Written on perfumed silk and sealed with a wax note shaped like a ginkgo leaf. It's beautiful, but it's not his. And for reasons he can't explain, that makes it feel heavier. So when he reaches the hilltop and sees the bell, he stops. He's heard stories. Everyone has. Couriers say the bell was never meant to ring, but to listen. That it absorbs the silence left between thoughts, storing it for those who have none left. And walks beneath it. Looks up. The bell looms quietly. He sets down his pouch, sits on the bench. His knees crack softly, reminding him that even youth has limits. The stars are beginning to gather above. The hilltop holds its breath and closes his eyes. He doesn't mean to. It just happens. And in that stillness, something shifts. A memory rises. A village far away. A rice field at sunset. His sister laughing because he couldn't carry more than 2 buckets of water without spilling half on his shoes. The smell of steamed yams. The creak of the door at home. He hasn't thought of any of this in weeks. The message he carries fades into the background, still present but no longer clinging to his ribs. He is for the first time in days not running ahead of himself, just sitting, and above him the bell remains motionless. But something about it has changed. It feels warmer now, less distant. He looks up again, not to ring it, just to acknowledge it. "I'll keep going," he whispers, and then, in a moment so small it might have been missed, the wind shifts. Not enough to move the trees, just enough to make the ropes that never touch the bell sway a hair's breadth. The bell does not ring, but it hums in his chest and stands. He picks up the pouch, takes a deep breath, and walks on, not faster, not slower, just with better footing. As he disappears down the west path, the hilltop returns to its hush. But something remains in the air. Not a sound, a presence. And you're there too now, seated beneath the bell, feeling your own breath settle, your thoughts loosen, your heart beats slow just a little. This is a place where nothing is asked of you, not even a single step, just rest. And when you're ready, the road waits, and it always will. Let me ask you something softly. Have you ever eaten something so ordinary that you tasted your whole life inside it? A memory wrapped in flour, a story pressed into dough, a moment filled with steam. Tonight we find ourselves at a roadside pavilion, no bigger than a fisherman's cart but wide enough for 3 benches and a hearth. The roof is made of thatch but repaired with care. Someone has added pressed flowers between the slats, just enough to notice if you tilt your head. Marigold, camellia, something blue that forgot its name. A wooden sign hangs above the open door. Buns and boiled water, payment optional, stories preferred. The place smells like home, not your home, not mine, just home. And inside, a man named Guo is steaming buns. He has steamed over 10,000 in his lifetime. He doesn't count. The steam counts for him, wraps his hands in fog, softens his knuckles, makes his knees feel less old than they are. The buns aren't fancy, but they are kind. Each one is made with glutinous rice flour, stuffed with things both humble and sweet. Mashed yam, honeyed chestnut, sometimes a preserved plum. Occasionally just air and good intention. He calls those empty, full buns. Tonight he makes 4, 2 for the table, 1 for himself, 1 for the next courier, and right on time, she arrives. Her name is Ping. She walks with one boot slightly heavier than the other. A stone caught in the sole, she says, too stubborn to shake loose. Her cheeks are whin pink and her satchel is stitched with patches from 5 provinces. She sits without speaking. Guo doesn't ask where she came from, he never does. He just hands her a bun, still warm, soft enough to require 2 hands, lightly browned on the base from where it touched the pan. Ping takes a bite, closes her eyes, lets out a sigh that probably travelled from her childhood all the way to this bench. Is it yam? She asks. Mostly, Guo replies, and a little surprise. She nods. Tastes like something I forgot I remembered. They eat in silence. The fire pops once, then again. Somewhere beyond the pavilion a fox barks, or laughs, hard to tell in the dark. Ping unwraps the scroll in her satchel, not to read it of course, but to check its thread, still tight, still sealed, still smelling faintly of sandalwood and ink. It's going to the mountains, she says, more to herself than to Guo. He nods. I passed a child, she adds, 2 posts back, said he saw a bun floating down the river. Guo chuckles. Probably one I dropped. That one had too much ginger. They sit a while longer. She pulls out a small carving, just a scrap of wood shaped vaguely like a turtle. Trade? She asks. Guo considers, then pulls out a clay bead painted with a spiral. Deal. No reason, no ritual, just 2 people passing along something small, something unrequired. The kind of exchange the Empire never taxed, never recorded, never noticed, and yet, perhaps the most important kind. Before she leaves, Ping turns to Guo. Do you ever travel? Once, he says, long ago, carried a scroll from the coast to the desert, took a whole season. What did it say? He smiles. It said, thanks for waiting. She grins, pockets her turtle, tightens her satchel, then disappears into the night with half a bun in her hand and no hurry in her step. Guo hums a tune he hasn't sung in years, wipes down the bench, prepares another bun. The steam curls upward, carrying the scent of memory and chestnut into the night. And you? You're here too. Feel the warmth of that bun between your fingers. Take a bite. Let it melt softly into your thoughts. Let it remind you of something you didn't know you were missing. The warmth, the pause, the fullness. Sometimes it's not the scroll that travels, it's the kindness around it. So rest a while longer, The next step is waiting, but it's in no rush, just like us. Let me take you now to a hill so still the wind tiptoes across it. Not for fear of disturbing anything, but out of respect. Atop that hill stands a structure not quite a tower, not quite a house. It's a square post with open sides, wooden beams worn smooth by weather and time, and in the centre, suspended from a beam carved with dragons and clouds, a bell. Not a large one, but heavy, bronze tarnished, etched with names that have long lost their vowels. It hangs motionless, even in a storm. No rope, no mallet, just air beneath it. They call it the bell that never rang, and yet it's never silent. Because this place isn't about sound, it's about pause. You see, this was once a major intersection in the Tang relay route. 4 paths converging at a single hilltop. Couriers from north, south, east and west passed through here. But instead of running scrolls to each other's hands, they stopped, sat, breathed, sometimes shared rice cakes, sometimes didn't say a word. The bell was placed not to summon or signal, but to hold space, a reminder that in the midst of carrying words, one should also make time for not speaking. Tonight, a courier named Anne arrives. He's young, still new enough to wear his uniform too precisely. Tunic straight, sash tight, satchel spotless. His eyes are alert, feet fast, heart slightly too eager. But he's tired. Really tired. Not just from the uphill trail that curves around the mountain like a lazy snake, but from the weight of responsibility. He's been entrusted with a message from the Ministry of Music. Delicate, poetic, strange. Written on perfumed silk and sealed with a wax note shaped like a ginkgo leaf. It's beautiful, but it's not his, and for reasons he can't explain, that makes it feel heavier. So when he reaches the hilltop and sees the bell, he stops. He's heard stories. Everyone has. Couriers say the bell was never meant to ring, but to listen. That it absorbs the silence left between thoughts, storing it for those who have none left. Anne walks beneath it. Looks up. The bell looms quietly. He sets down his pouch, sits on the bench. His knees crack softly, reminding him that even youth has limits. The stars are beginning to gather above. The hilltop holds its breath and closes his eyes. He doesn't mean to. It just happens. And in that stillness, something shifts. A memory rises. A village far away. A rice field at sunset. His sister laughing because he couldn't carry more than 2 buckets of water without spilling half on his shoes. The smell of steamed yams, the creak of the door at home. He hasn't thought of any of this in weeks. The message he carries fades into the background, still present but no longer clinging to his ribs. He is for the first time in days not running ahead of himself, just sitting. And above him, the bell remains motionless. But something about it has changed. It feels warmer now, less distant. He looks up again, not to ring it, just to acknowledge it. "I'll keep going," he whispers, and then, in a moment so small it might have been missed. The wind shifts. Not enough to move the trees, just enough to make the ropes that never touch the bell sway a hair's breadth. The bell does not ring, but it hums in his chest and stands. He picks up the pouch, takes a deep breath, and walks on, not faster, not slower, just with better footing. As he disappears down the west path, the hilltop returns to its hush. But something remains in the air. Not a sound, a presence. And you? You're there too now, seated beneath the bell, feeling your own breath settle. Your thoughts loosen. Your heart beats slow just a little. This is a place where nothing is asked of you. Not even a single step. Just rest. And when you're ready, the road waits. And it always will. Let me ask you something softly. Have you ever eaten something so ordinary that you tasted your whole life inside it? A memory wrapped in flour, a story pressed into dough, a moment filled with steam. Tonight we find ourselves at a roadside pavilion, no bigger than a fisherman's cart but wide enough for 3 benches and a hearth. The roof is made of thatch but repaired with care. Someone has added pressed flowers between the slats, just enough to notice if you tilt your head. Marigold, camellia, something blue that forgot its name. A wooden sign hangs above the open door. Buns and boiled water, payment optional, stories preferred. The place smells like home, not your home, not mine, just home. And inside, a man named Guo is steaming buns. He has steamed over 10,000 in his lifetime. He doesn't count. The steam counts for him, wraps his hands in fog, softens his knuckles, makes his knees feel less old than they are. The buns aren't fancy, but they are kind. Each one is made with glutinous rice flour stuffed with things both humble and sweet. Mashed yam, honeyed chestnut, sometimes a preserved plum, occasionally just air and good intention. He calls those empty, full buns. Tonight he makes 4, 2 for the table, 1 for himself, 1 for the next courier, and right on time, she arrives. Her name is Ping. She walks with one boot slightly heavier than the other. A stone caught in the sole, she says, too stubborn to shake loose. Her cheeks are wind pink and her satchel is stitched with patches from 5 provinces. She sits without speaking. Guo doesn't ask where she came from, he never does. He just hands her a bun, still warm, soft enough to require 2 hands, lightly browned on the base from where it touched the pan. Ping takes a bite, closes her eyes, lets out a sigh that probably travelled from her childhood all the way to this bench. "Is it yam?" she asks. "Mostly," Guo replies, and a little surprise. She nods. "Tastes like something I forgot I remembered." They eat in silence. The fire pops once, then again. Somewhere beyond the pavilion a fox barks, or laughs, hard to tell in the dark. Ping unwraps the scroll in her satchel, not to read it of course, but to check its thread. Still tight, still sealed, still smelling faintly of sandalwood and ink. "It's going to the mountains," she says, more to herself than to Guo. He nods. "I passed a child," she adds. 2 posts back. Said he saw a bun floating down the river." Guo chuckles. "Probably one I dropped. That one had too much ginger." They sit a while longer. She pulls out a small carving, just a scrap of wood shaped vaguely like a turtle. "Trade?" she asks. Guo considers, then pulls out a clay bead painted with a spiral. "Deal." No reason, no ritual, just 2 people passing along something small, something unrequired. The kind of exchange the Empire never taxed, never recorded, never noticed. And yet, perhaps the most important kind. Before she leaves, Ping turns to Guo. "Do you ever travel?" "Once," he says, "long ago. Carried a scroll from the coast to the desert. Took a whole season." "What did it say?" He smiles. "It said, 'Thanks for waiting.'" She grins, pockets her turtle, tightens her satchel, then disappears into the night with half a bun in her hand and no hurry in her step. Guo hums a tune he hasn't sung in years, wipes down the bench, prepares another bun. The steam curls upward, carrying the scent of memory and chestnut into the night. "And you? You're here too. Feel the warmth of that bun between your fingers. Take a bite. Let it melt softly into your thoughts. Let it remind you of something you didn't know you were missing. The warmth, the pause, the fullness. Sometimes it's not the scroll that travels, it's the kindness around it. So rest a while longer. The next step is waiting, but it's in no rush, just like us." The night deepens now, not heavy, not cold, just deeper, like a warm bath poured a little too full, lapping at the rim of your awareness. "You're still with me, aren't you?" Good, because now we walk along a stretch of road known only to those who carry messages after moonrise. It's not marked on any map, too narrow for carts, too quiet for merchants. But it glows faintly from the lanterns set out along the way. Lanterns fueled by sesame oil, cotton wicks and care. Each sits atop a low wooden post, no taller than your knee, lit by the night runners, extinguished by the morning wind. They flicker like sleepy fireflies, golden, uncertain, but always present. Tonight one lantern is being refilled by a woman named Rui. She kneels beside it, unscrews the cap with fingers stained by soot and ink, and pours the oil in a slow spiral, careful not to spill a single drop. Lantern oil is precious, carried from station to station like a message itself. Rui is what they call a shadow tender, a courier who travels not with scrolls but with light. Her duty is to tend the lanterns of the southern shadow path, from Hollow Bridge to Cypress Crossing. No one asks her to do it. She simply does. "Light wants company," she once said, same as messages. Her satchel contains no parchment, no seal, just oil flasks, extra wicks, and a soft cloth for cleaning soot from the glass. Tonight, as she finishes lighting the lantern near the bend, a voice greets her. "You're early!" It's GA, a courier who's run the Hollow Bridge circuit for 12 winters. He carries a scroll tonight, wrapped in grey silk and sealed with wax shaped like a phoenix feather. "Didn't expect you yet," he says. Rui smiles. "The wind helped." He sits beside her. "I hate this bend," he says, gesturing at the shadows beyond. "Always feel like something's watching." "Something is," she replies. "Me." He chuckles, then hands her a small pastry, sesame, crusted, stuffed with green bean paste and orange peel. She accepts it with a nod. They eat in silence. Around them, the forest hums with nightlife. Frogs arguing, leaves whispering, the occasional owl practicing diplomacy. Yi holds out the scroll. "Want to carry it?" Rui shakes her head. "You're faster." "But you're lighter." She gestures to her satchel. "Oil makes me heavy." He nods, as if that settles it. Before parting, they exchange one more item, a tiny bottle of camellia oil. She gives it to him, for sore feet, or dry hands, or maybe just for remembering kindness. As he vanishes down the path, Rui leans back against a tree and watches the lantern she just lit. It flutters briefly, then steadies. The flame inside casts a soft ring of gold against the darkness, like a sleeping thought you forgot you had. She hums an old lullaby. No words, just tune. A shadow passes overhead, a bat or a dream. And as the wind begins to shift, she closes her eyes for a moment. Just a moment. When she opens them, the flame is still there, still holding the space, still making a promise, to guide, to wait, to burn gently until no longer needed. And you're here too, sitting beside her. Feel the warmth of that lantern glow on your face. Hear the gentle sputter of the oil, the creak of an old tree settling into sleep. No rush. The message will wait. The road will wait. For now, let the flicker calm you. Let the shadows lean in. Let the night hold you gently, like Rui holds her oil flask, steady, unhurried, full of quiet purpose. And when we move again, it will be not toward urgency, but into a deeper kind of stillness. Have you ever unwrapped something so small, so fragrant that it made your heart pause? Not from drama, not from worry, but from something gentler, like the smell of childhood, or the sound of your name spoken by someone who knows how to say it just right. Tonight, in a sleepy village curled along the riverbank, we find just such a moment. The village doesn't have a name you'd find on a map, but it's known to couriers as the Peel Stop, not because the paths are slippery, though after a good rain they might be, but because of what waits inside the post house. Tangerines, dozens of them, hung from the ceiling in braided cords, dried slowly over smoke and time. When you walk in, the scent wraps around you like a story told without words. Citrus, sweet, with a hint of wood and sleep. The postmaster here is an elderly woman named Jin. No one knows her full name. She simply answers to Jin. Tonight she's boiling a pot of water laced with tangerine peel, ginger and a splash of rice vinegar. It's not a fancy tea, but it's the kind that makes your stomach whisper thank you. She pours a cup for the courier who's just arrived. His name is Bo. Thin, soft-spoken, little hunch from too many Lee and too few naps. He carries one scroll and a note tucked behind his ear. The scroll is official, the note personal. He sets them both on the counter. Jin eyes the note. Not sealed, she observes. Bo shrugs. It's a list, from my niece. Things she wants from the capital. Jin opens it gently, squints. Lotus candy, paper dolls, a cat. Bo smiles. She's optimistic. Jin pours him another cup of peel tea. He drinks slowly, letting the citrus steam warm the air behind his eyes. Outside, the river murmurs. Inside, the post house glows. There's a warmth in the wood, in the shelves, in the corners. A warmth built not by fire, but by being lived in. Bo takes out a pouch. Inside is a small bundle wrapped in cloth. From my sister, he says. Tangerine peel, she's been aging since spring. Jin unwraps it, sniffs. Too young to drink, but perfect for wrapping. She pulls a sheet of paper from under the counter, carefully slices the peel into thin strips, and begins folding it around the personal note. What are you doing? Bo asks. Messages wrapped in peel get remembered, she replies. He chuckles. Is that science? Better. It's tradition. Once folded, she ties the bundle with a thread the colour of morning fog. Hands it back to him. Now it smells like something someone will want to open, she says. Bo tucks it into his coat, sits quietly. After a while, he says, I don't remember when I last sent a message just for myself. Jinjin nods. She points to a little box on the shelf behind her. Inside, dozens of notes, some only a word, some blank, all wrapped in peel. What are those? Messages no one asked for, she says, but I keep them, just in case someone comes looking. Bo pulls out a scrap of paper from his satchel, writes a single word, still. He hands it to her. She wraps it in peel, places it in the box. Neither says anything more. Outside, the river keeps its own rhythm. Inside, the air smells of citrus, warmth, and small honesty. Bo leaves before midnight. His steps are lighter. Not because he's carrying less, but because he finally left something behind. And you? You're still here, seated on a bench beneath the tangerines, their shapes casting soft shadows across your lap. You can feel the citrus oil in the air, hear the paper being folded, taste the tea, bitter, sweet, and quietly wise. Maybe there's something you've carried for too long. Maybe it's time to wrap it in something fragrant and leave it with the quiet ones. Maybe, just maybe, the peel will help you remember what it means to forget, softly. So rest here a little longer. Let the scent of tangerine guide your next breath. And when you're ready, we'll continue. Tonight we walk with thunder on the edge of the sky. Not crashing yet, not even grumbling, just watching. A hush before the hush. Somewhere in the distance, clouds gather like old friends pulling chairs around a fire, ready to speak but not quite yet. The air carries the scent of stone and wetness, the kind of breath the earth takes right before the rain begins. And at the centre of all this, a lone pavilion, small, tucked at the side of a narrow road flanked by wild grass and stone markers worn smooth by weather. The roof is made of bamboo tiles slick with mist. The flag out front hangs heavy, damp but dignified. This is a rainhold station, one of many tiny shelters where relay routes paused, not for politics nor protocol, but for the sky. You see, while most Tang messengers ran without complaint in sun or snow, there were stretches of road too narrow, too steep, or too river-tangled to brave in rain. And so they waited. Here, where the clouds made the decisions, tonight a courier named Tien waits. She sits with her knees drawn up on a straw mat, her cloak draped across her shoulders like a sleeping dog. Her satchel rests beside her, waterproofed, yes, but still not invincible. Inside, a single scroll wrapped in lacquered leather and tied with twine the colour of moss. It's not urgent, but it is fragile. A trade agreement inked on silk, the kind of scroll that wrinkles with too much breath and warps at the mere thought of drizzle. So, she waits. Outside, a line of ants disappears into a crack in the stones. A toad hops lazily from puddle to puddle, seemingly delighted at the entire arrangement. Tien watches them, sips from a flask of jasmine tea that tastes slightly metallic from the tin. She doesn't mind. Waiting is part of the job. Some runners pace when the clouds come. Tien, she breathes. She listens to the way the trees shift when the wind rises, how the bamboo fence creaks ever so slightly, like it's settling into its role as witness. She watches the way each droplet gathers on the edge of the roof before letting go, not with urgency, but inevitability. Occasionally someone else waits here too. Tonight it's a farmer named Lao passing through on his way to market. He has no scrolls, only a basket of salted radish and a fondness for riddles. He offers Tien a pickled plum. She accepts. He doesn't ask about her message. She doesn't ask about his riddles. They simply sit. Two souls with different weights, finding balance on the same bench. The rain begins quietly, a few taps, then more, until the pavilion becomes its own small drum, softly tapped by thousands of invisible fingers. Tien breathes it in. Her muscles loosen, her knees stop aching, her thoughts slow like oxen in a muddy field. She opens a small cloth bundle, inside dried apple slices and candied lotus root. She offers Lao a piece. He declines, says he once broke a tooth on one. She laughs, and it sounds like thunder pretending not to be serious. They sit until the sky grows tired. The rain fades, not in a dramatic stop, but in a gentle forgetting. By then, the scroll is safe to move again. Tien checks the twine, brushes one last droplet from the leather, stands, nods to Lao. He waves with 2 fingers, mouthful of plum, and off she goes, down a road now slick but passable with puddles reflecting stars and the scent of moss rising up from the stones. She doesn't run, she walks, not from laziness, but from knowing that this moment, this stillness, has filled something in her she didn't know was missing. And somewhere behind her, the pavilion waits for the next rain, for the next breath, for the next pause. As for you, you're still here, beneath the eaves, dry and warm with the soft patter still echoing in your ears. Perhaps you've waited long enough too, not for rain to stop, but for something inside to quiet. Let it settle, let it rest, and when you're ready, we'll carry the message forward, together. Tonight we find ourselves in a place where paper listens. It's not a scroll house, not a station, not even a stop on the official map, just a room, square, stone-floored, with windows made not of glass but oiled parchment stretched thin, letting in light like it was a secret. This is the listening room, hidden behind a ceramic shop in the town of Liangfen, known to only a handful of couriers, those who carry messages that cannot be heard aloud but must still be understood. Inside sits a man named Shu. You'd barely notice him at first, just a figure by a low table, hair tied back, robes the colour of faded linen. But then you'd see his hands, ink-stained, precise, moving like he's shaping thought into shape without thinking. Shu doesn't speak, not because he can't, but because long ago he realized he didn't need to. His brush does the speaking. He's a ghost scribe, one who transcribes unwritten messages, the kind that live in a courier's face, or in the way they grip their pouch, or in the pause between their footsteps and their greeting. Tonight the courier is a boy, barely 16. He walks in with a satchel half unbuckled, dust on his knees, and fear in his shoulders. Not the kind of fear that screams, the kind that asks quietly if there's still time to do the right thing. He bows. Shu returns the gesture with a nod, then gestures to the cushion. The boy kneels. For a while there is only the sound of water bubbling in a kettle, and then, slowly the boy begins to speak. Not with words, but with memories. He unwraps a ribbon, pulls out a piece of torn silk, lays down a jade bead with a chip on one side. Shu watches, not the objects, the way the boy places them, with reverence and something unspoken. Then Shu begins to write. Not quickly, each stroke is deliberate, soft, measured like a pulse. The characters form a message no one said aloud, but both of them recognize it. It says, "I wasn't ready, but I came anyway." The boy breathes, and for the first time all day, exhales fully. Shu folds the page, tucks it into a sleeve pouch lined with lambskin, dabs his brush clean, then pours 2 cups of barley tea with dried chrysanthemum petals, floating on top like paper boats. They drink in silence. Outside, a small bell chimes. A courier passes on the street, unaware of the message just borne inside, and still the paper listens. Later the boy stands, takes the pouch, bows, and walks away not faster, just straighter. Not with pride, not with shame, just with the clarity of someone who finally said what needed saying, even if it never passed his lips. Shu remains. He prepares fresh ink, lights a new stick of cedar incense, and waits, not for words, but for moments that need to be captured before they fade. He once wrote a message that was nothing but a page of empty circles. The courier said it worked. Sometimes silence is eloquent. And you're here too, sitting cross-legged by the window, watching the ink dry. Let the smell of cedar calm you. Let the soft rustle of paper invite you to soften the crease between your eyebrows. You don't have to say anything. You don't even have to know what needs saying. Just breathe. Let the page remain open. Let the message come when it's ready. And when we rise again, we'll carry it, not on our tongues, but in the quiet between our footsteps. Let me tell you a strange thing. Sometimes the shortest path is the longest one you never meant to take. And sometimes that's the one that changes everything. This story begins just after dawn. The sky is half-stirred porridge, clouds and light mixed in slow spirals. The road is empty, save for one runner, a man named Han. His hair is tied high, his knees are loud, and his confidence unshakable. At least that's what he says. "I know a shortcut," he told the last postmaster. To which the postmaster replied, "Those are famous last words, you know." But Han had done this run 12 times, carried scrolls from the interior markets all the way to the border checkpoints, through snow, through floods. Once, even with a dislocated toe, he claimed he'd just taped it to the next one. He figured a shortcut would be fine. It wasn't. The path he took, marked only by a crumbling sign and a suspiciously cheerful squirrel, led him through a bamboo grove that quickly turned into a marsh that eventually became a very confused forest, where every direction looked slightly uphill. By noon he wasn't lost exactly, but he wasn't found either. Still, he walked on. The scroll in his pouch, a trade declaration with 7 official seals, remained dry. He'd triple-wrapped it in oiled paper because he was professional, even if directionally misguided. At some point he stumbled upon an old shrine. Tiny, leaning slightly, overgrown with vines that smelled of citrus and memory, and beside it a bench, which, to a tired courier with a satchel full of sealed intent, might as well have been a royal bed. So he sat, ate a rice dumpling stuffed with pickled mustard greens, drank water from his gourd, stared at the moss and the way it curled around the stone like it had always belonged. And then, a voice. Shortcut, was it? An old woman, barefoot, holding a basket of mushrooms and the kind of expression that says, "I've seen better decisions made by geese." Han nodded sheepishly. She sat beside him, pulled a sweet potato from her basket, tore it in half, handed him a piece. He took it. "Sometimes," she said, "the shortcut is just the road that reminds you to sit down." They ate quietly. The shrine behind them buzzed gently with bees and old incense. Eventually she stood, pointed to a barely visible footpath beyond the ferns. "That one will get you back to the road, slowly, but surely." He bowed. Not deeply, just enough to say thank you for knowing more than me. He followed her direction. The path was winding, narrow, filled with unexpected kindnesses. A bird that followed for 3 li, a tree shaped like a question mark, a rock with a dent just right for sitting again. By dusk he reached the main route. Dusty, familiar, honest. A young courier passed him, eyes wide. "Where did you come from?" the boy asked. Han grinned. "Took the long shortcut." The boy blinked. "That's not a thing." Han shrugged. "It is now." He delivered the scroll just before lanterns were lit. It was received, signed, filed, forgotten, probably. But Han, he remembered the bench, the potato, the shrine that leaned like it was tired of pretending. "And you're here now, aren't you? On that same bench, feeling the warmth of cooked roots still lingering on your fingertips, hearing the hush of moss and wind. Maybe you've taken your own long shortcut recently. Maybe you're on it now. Let it be enough. Let it stretch. Let it remind you that being slightly lost doesn't mean you're off course. Sometimes it just means you're listening more closely to the way the world is shaped. So rest your feet, wiggle your toes, and when you're ready, we'll take the next turn together. Even if it's a little longer than expected. Let's begin with a confession. Even the best forget sometimes. Not grand things like destinations or directions, but small ones that matter more than they seem. Like whether you said goodbye, or whether the scroll in your satchel was meant for the West Gate or the East Gate with the same name but a very different outcome. Tonight's story is about a man named Wei. He was a courier of solid reputation, dependable, quiet. The kind of runner who could carry a scroll across 500 li and still return the same week to help patch the relay roof. He once navigated a rockslide detour using only shadows and the scent of fermented tofu. People trusted him. But today, Wei has forgotten the message. Not the route, not the scroll itself. He has it, right there in his pouch. What he's forgotten is why it mattered. It began earlier this morning. A routine delivery from Plumgate Post to the Jade Orchard Retreat. A distance he could run in his sleep. But somewhere along the trail, between a crow stealing his bread and a pine cone hitting him squarely on the head, he lost the thread. Not the scroll, the thread of intention. And that unsettled him. So he did what any sensible person would do. He stopped, sat, opened the scroll, stared at the ink, read the words twice, and still nothing. It was beautifully written, full of ceremonial phrases and flourishes that fluttered like ribbon in the margins. But the core meaning? Gone. The message had become noise. So Wei, in a rare moment of rebellion, did something unheard of. He folded the scroll, placed it back in his pouch, and walked to the nearest lake. Yes, a lake. Not a relay station, not a tea shop. Just a wide, still place with dragonflies and lilies and the sound of frogs playing poker with mosquitoes. He removed his sandals, sat on a smooth stone, and waited. Not for a sign, just for a feeling. Eventually a girl walked by. 10, 11, hair like a brush dipped in ink. She carried a bundle of long beans and a look of very serious purpose. She eyed him. "What's wrong with your face?" she asked. Wei blinked. "My face? You look like someone drew confusion on it with charcoal," he chuckled. "I forgot what I'm carrying." "Is it heavy?" "No." "Then it can't be that important." He smiled. "That's the problem." She sat beside him, ate a bean. "Sometimes," she said, "I forget why I went outside. Then I see a beetle or a weird cloud or a goose being rude and I remember. The world pulls it out of me." Wei stared at the lake, then at the scroll. Still nothing. So he closed his eyes and listened. Not to birds or bugs, but to himself, to the rhythm of his own breath, to the steady beat of his pulse. And somewhere in that stillness, he remembered. Not the words, but the feeling. The message was not about trade or grain or official declarations. It was an apology, disguised as commerce, a bridge, not between cities, but between two people who hadn't spoken in years because one had borrowed a lantern and returned it broken. Silly, yes, but real, and needed. Wei stood. The girl waved. He walked, not quickly, not triumphantly, but purposefully. By the time he arrived at the Jade Orchard retreat, the scroll felt warm in his hands. The person who received it opened it and smiled, not because of what it said, but because of what it meant. And that was enough. And you? Perhaps you've forgotten something too. A word, a name, a reason. That's okay. Sit beside the lake. Feel the smooth stone beneath you. The sun behind your shoulder, the steady echo of breath in your chest. What matters will return, softly, in its own time, and when it does, we'll carry it forward together. There are maps made of paper, maps scratched into bark, and maps carved into stone, painted on silk or etched onto the bones of animals long gone. And then, there are maps made of steam. Tonight we find one. Not in a palace, not in a scroll library, but in a kitchen, a small one. Just enough space for 2 clay stoves, a crooked shelf filled with teacups, and a wooden bench where couriers wait for soup that tastes like geography. The kitchen belongs to a man named Wen. He used to be a courier, ran his legs down to the knees and his shoes down to dreams. After 30 years of roots and scrolls and moonlit slips on wet cobblestone, he retired his feet and turned to flavour. He runs a soup stall now, not just any soup. This is root soup, made with ingredients from all the regions touched by the Tang relay. Dried seaweed from the coast, mushrooms from the central hills, lotus root from a river town, chili from the southern posts, wheat noodles from the cold plains, and broth, clear as glass, brewed so slowly the spoon leans over and sighs before diving in. He never charges for it. "You've already paid with your steps," he says to every courier who wanders in. And tonight it's Yue who wanders in. She's damp, smells faintly of ink and river wind. Her pouch is light, scroll delivered 2 posts ago, but her shoulders carry the weight of something heavier. Doubt. She sits. Wen says nothing, just ladles broth into a chip bowl, slides it across the counter. Yue eats, slowly. First sip, northern wheat. Second, mushroom, soft and sweet. Third, the faint spice of places she's yet to reach. Wen watches her eyes soften, her breath slow. "You ever forget where you're going?" she asks. He nods. "All the time, especially when I knew exactly." she grins. Each bowl is a map, he adds. Just one you feel instead of read. Yue takes another bite. Feels it. Remembers a town with garlic drying on doorposts, a river so wide it made the moon seem small, a rest station with walls painted yellow because someone once said yellow helps the knees. With each spoonful the road rises inside her again, not like a line on parchment, but like warmth moving down the spine. You have any left, she asks, for the road? He nods toward a tiny jar beside the stove. She opens it. Inside, dried broth concentrate, like a poem turned solid. She pockets it with a bow. Before she leaves, Wen wipes down the counter, then draws something with his finger in the steam rising from the pot. A trail, a bend, a house, a tree. Shortcut to the west gate, he says, and it'll disappear. Only if you don't carry it. She nods, walks out into the cool evening, the taste of mushroom and memory still on her tongue. As she walks, she traces the steam map in her thoughts, finds the house, finds the tree, smiles when it matches. You see, some maps don't need to be permanent, some just need to be warm enough to get you through. And you're still here, in that kitchen, spoon in hand, steam rising, let it wash over you. Let the scent of broth and old wood settle into your chest. You don't need to know the whole route, just the next spoonful, the next warm turn. Let the map rise in you, not as ink or road signs, but as peace. You'll get there, one taste at a time. There is a kind of silence reserved only for things unopened. Not ignored, not forgotten, simply never unfolded. And tonight, in a quiet chamber of the Imperial Archive, tucked behind a red lacquered screen and 3 bamboo partitions, we find such a thing. A scroll, wrapped in green silk, tied with golden thread, and untouched for 40 years. It sits on a shelf marked only with one character, die, to wait. The chamber's guardian is a man named Luo. He's not a courier, not anymore. His job is to care for the messages that were never delivered, or strangely, were delivered but never opened. Messages that sit like sleeping cats on shelves, some curling at the corners, others sealed so tightly even the threads have become part of the parchment. Luo treats each one like a story that hasn't decided how to end. Tonight he's cleaning the shelves, dusting each scroll with a brush made from crane feathers and pine resin. He hums a little tune passed down through scribes, no lyrics, just breath and memory. When he reaches the green silk scroll, he stops. Not because it's delicate, but because today is the anniversary of its arrival. He remembers. He was the one who received it, 40 years ago, from a courier named Nian, a man with a crooked wrist, a mole on his cheek, and the kind of voice that always sounded like it had just finished telling a joke. Nian handed over the scroll and said only, "They may not open this, that's okay," and they never did. The scroll was logged, placed on the waiting shelf, and there it remained. No one claimed it, no one demanded it, and yet no one ever moved it either. Luo sits on the stool beside the shelf and sips a bowl of barley water. He doesn't open the scroll, he wouldn't, but he does listen. Some say if you sit quietly enough beside the unopened ones, you can feel what they meant. Not word for word, but shape, emotion, intention. And tonight, the green scroll hums softly, like a lullaby stuck in a drawer. Luo closes his eyes. He imagines a woman holding a brush, dipping it into ink scented with jasmine, writing slowly, carefully, folding it, wrapping it, tying it shut, then not sending it for weeks, then changing her mind, and finally, at the last moment, placing it in a courier's hand, just in case. Some messages are sent for the sender, not the recipient. He finishes his barley water, brushes off the shelf, then tucks a tiny note behind the scroll, not a label, just a thought. It reads, "Still listening." Somewhere outside, a new courier arrives. She won't see the scroll, she won't ask. She's carrying a poem meant for a friend who hasn't been spoken to in 17 years. It rhymes in all the wrong places. It's lovely. Luo receives it with both hands, adds it to the archive. But before shelving it, he reads it once, smiles, closes it again. And as the lights dim and the night curls deeper into the corners of the room, the scrolls breathe softly in their sleep. And you? You're here now too, seated near that same shelf, feeling the hush of things unspoken, and perhaps you've written something in your heart that never reached its destination. Perhaps it's okay if it never does. Sometimes the message was meant only to be held, not sent, not open, just carried. So breathe with that stillness. Let it wrap around you like green silk. Let the hush of unspoken thoughts settle into your shoulders, and when you're ready, we'll carry just one last chapter together. There's no drumbeat tonight, no final whistle, no horn echoing across the valley, just the sound of soft wind through bamboo, a lantern swaying gently, a kettle cooling slowly, a road that stretches not into darkness, but into something lighter than shadow, brighter than dawn. This is the end, and also it isn't. You see, the Tangfoot relay had no grand finale, no celebratory message declaring we're done. Just footsteps, scrolls, the passing of presents from hand to hand. It simply continued, and somewhere, even now, it still does. This last post is called the Gentle Gate, not because it's ornate or ceremonial. In fact, there's no gate at all, just a wooden beam balanced across two stones. If you step over it, you've left the network, or perhaps entered it fully. Tonight, the postkeeper is a man named Yizhan. He's older than the road, or feels like it. His beard has turned white in layers, like paper soaked in rain and dried by laughter. He sits with his feet tucked under a woolen blanket, a teacup resting on one knee, and a cat curled up beside him named Brush. The name fits. She sheds. Tonight a final courier approaches. You've met her before. May, with her cloaks, her careful steps, the one who crossed the river with ginger candy and never asked for praise. Her satchel is empty now. She's delivered her last scroll, but still she walks. Why? Because some messages don't live on paper. They live in posture, in breath, in footsteps made soft enough to hear your own thoughts again. Jian sees her, nods, no words. He pours a second cup of tea. She sits. They sip. Brush purrs. It begins to rain, but gently, as if the sky were bowing in thanks. May doesn't flinch. She simply says, "It's good tea." Jian smiles. It should be. It's been waiting. They sit there for a long while. You might expect a grand realization, a lesson, a moral etched into the sky. But no, only this. The path is the message, the carrying is the meaning, the rest is hush. When May finally stands, she doesn't look back, doesn't bow, doesn't make a gesture. She just sets one foot forward, then another, and another. She disappears not into an ending, but into everything else. Into memory, into breath, into the long, quiet space where all journeys soften and fold into sleep. And you? You've come all this way, from Chang'an's bustling start to cloud cakes, to rivers and ridges, scrolls and silence, porridge and poetry. You've carried something too. Maybe not in your hands, but in your heart. A stillness, a story, a sense of being held. So now, let it rest. You've reached the Gentle Gate. There's nothing left to do. No call to action, no scroll to deliver, just sleep. Peaceful, warm, carried. The last relay never ends. It simply becomes your next dream. May these memories guide you into peaceful dreams. If you drifted off, let me know below. Sweet dreams. This is Boring History for Sleep, signing off. Whispers, good night.